Hey, 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 what's happening? Still me, still grinding, still getting through these position groups. This is the GM. I'm your guy, Liam Boulanger. And next up is an important position group, the cornerbacks. And so we know that this is a position group that has been under fire um, over the last 2 years. In the 2021 season, we know that everybody in the secondary seemed like they got hurt. All the corners, and at one point we were playing with all backup corners, and I think at one point all backup safeties, if I can remember correctly. Even to the point where Joe Burrow hit us up for over 500 yards passing, which is kind of what made Cincinnati start running off at the mouth about what they could and couldn't do and who could stop them and all that kind of stuff. But again, if they win it, you can't say nothing. But this position group has been much maligned for a couple of seasons. Had a turnaround in some aspects this year. A couple of players had a turnaround season, but still a position group that needs some adjustments, needs some pieces added, whether the draft or whether free agency. And so let's take a look. There's several players in this position group. Um, that we'll discuss. And let me get my Chrome open right here. And here we go. First up, with cornerbacks, we got Marlon Humphrey is the number one, and Marcus Peters is considered the number two corner. And we know right off that Marlon Humphreys will 100% be on the roster next year. His salary hit is too big. I think that he has a $19 million cap hit and a $23 million cap hit if they decide to cut him. So he's not going anywhere. He had a really good year this year. He had some slip ups, but if you're getting targeted in the pass game, you're gonna give up some passes, some plays every now and then. But for the most part, Marlon Humphreys handled his business on a consistent basis. And there were certain games where you didn't even know he was playing because they didn't even mention his name, which is always a mark of a good corner. Uh, Anytime you start mentioning the cornerback's name over and over in the game, it's usually because they getting lit up by the other team. So um, Marlon Humphrey's had a good season this year. 100% he'll be back on the roster as the number one corner. Um, Next will be Marcus Peters, and I certainly believe Marcus Peters is done in Baltimore. We know Marcus Peters has had a season-ending knee injury in 2021 and was not ready to go at the beginning of the season, worked his way back into shape and got on the field. Marcus Peters had some good plays, but had more poor plays than we would have expected him to have because he has such a big name at the cornerback position. But I think that because of the injury, I think we heard during the season he doubted himself. He had some issues with confidence, and it showed up on the field. But Marcus Peters had some blow ups. One in particular, I remember with John Harbaugh, where John Harbaugh came out and said, I love Marcus and brothers fight and all this kind of family stuff, which I do believe John Harbaugh believes that the Baltimore Ravens are a family, but I don't think that Marcus Peters is going to be a part of the Baltimore Ravens' future. It's time to get younger and cheaper at that position. And if we can do both, get more talented and cheaper, that will bode well for the Baltimore Ravens cornerback room. If we move down, we got Brandon Stevens, and we also have Pepe. Uh, and Pepe Williams, who was a draft pick of the Baltimore Ravens this past year. Had some flashes, but from what I could tell, did not get a lot of game time this year. And so don't know why. I mean, there was definitely a need at times, especially with Marcus Peters being out of the lineup. There was a need for Pepe to get some field time, but didn't really maybe in practice he didn't show consistency and ability to cover or whatever it was. But definitely a guy who has some speed, has some cover skills, and maybe with 1 year under his belt, he'll come out next year and be lights out in the second year for the Baltimore Ravens. But 100% he'll be on the roster simply because he's under contract and he was a draft pick in 2022 for the Baltimore Ravens. Brandon Stevens is a guy who started out at safety and switched to corner and played some safety, and then he played mostly cornerback this past year. Um, he's had some ups and downs at the cornerback position, more downs than ups. There was times where he would be the starting corner, and teams would target him simply because um, he's not a natural corner. He's just not. He can play corner, but he's not a natural corner. He's more of a safety, and I could foresee a move back to safety. And I'll tell you why when we get to the safety room. But I could definitely see a move back to safety for Brandon Stevens in 2023. But I think he certainly will be on the roster. Again, he's under contract, rookie contract. So it's not a situation where it's going to cost him a whole lot of money to um to be on that roster. And he has a couple of years of experience in that Baltimore defense. As we keep rolling, mm, we got Kayvon Seymour, who's listed as the fifth corner. Um, I don't remember a lot about Kayvon Seymour this year. I know he started out in Carolina, moved around the league a couple of times, but has been in Baltimore for 2 years. But he has shown some ability to cover. I do remember him making a couple of plays this year, but not a whole lot. And so there's not a whole lot I can say about Kayvon Seymour. I think that he certainly could be a practice squad option for sure. I'm not sure if he'll make the 53-man roster, but Baltimore always needs corners. So if he shows himself well in training camp and preseason, he certainly could be a part. But at this point, it's a huge question mark. At this point, I would have to say he's a practice squad guy more than a 53-man roster guy. Jalen Armour Davis is another draft pick from the 2022 draft. Never really broke ground in his rookie season. In fact, ended up on IR at the end of the season. Um, had a lot of struggles from what I understand. Didn't see him on the field a whole lot, and then, like I said, was on IR. So huge question mark. He certainly will be on the roster. Because again, Baltimore does not believe in wasting draft picks, and here's a guy who will be a rotation guy, or at least a space filler on a 53-man roster, and he's cheap at this point. So I do believe he'll be on the roster in the 2023 season. When we scroll down, we got Kyle Fuller. Can't say much about Kyle Fuller, veteran, brought him in to be the nickel corner and a backup on the outside. But as we know, he tore the ACL, I believe, in the first game of the season, and was lost for the season, of course. And so he is a free agent. Do not think he'll be back in Baltimore, although he's from the city of Baltimore. Do not think he'll be back in Baltimore this year. The only way he'll be back in Baltimore this year is if he has a nice recovery, show some skill in training camp and preseason. But at this point, I don't foresee Kyle Fuller being in that room, in the cornerback room for the 2023 season. When you move over, here's a guy. I have no idea who he is. Okay. He's definitely a practice squatter, and so I can't say much about him at this point, unless he just shows out, right? Unless he has some kind of elite skill or talent. I don't see him making the roster in 2023. Bo Peep Keys move down. Um, I think that oh, you know what? I think we're in the safety section at this point. And so oh no, we're not. We're not in safeties. But the corners have a Darius Washington listed. I saw that name, thought we were in the safety position. But let's keep rolling. Darius Washington is a safety, small. I think he's 5'8", 5'9", and so he does fit in at that nickel corner spot. I think he certainly could be on the roster next year. He has shown some talent and skill in the preseason. He did get some call-ups this year when the other guys were out or injured. But I think that he'll be more in that nickel role primarily. than he would be a safety. That's probably why he's listed here in this spot. So I think there is a 50-50 chance that Darius Washington will be on the roster. He was a draft pick from a couple of years ago. Again, has shown some flashes. So I think that it is a possibility he's on the roster simply because he would come cheap. He would absolutely would. And at this point, with such high salaries at some other positions, the Baltimore Ravens do need inexpensive talent, quality talent at different positions. And so Darius Washington does fit that bill. And then Daryl Worley. We saw Daryl Worley show up and play really well. I believe it was in week 18 against Cincinnati Bengals and their high-powered offense, or what is believed to be a high-powered offense. Made some big plays. He's a savvy veteran, um, and he will compete. And so I think that if nothing else, Daryl Worley will be on the practice squad, maybe make the 53-man roster because he has shown an ability to compete. And in fact, Baltimore must like something about him because he probably had 10 to 12 different transactions this year on the 53-man roster, get cut, signed to the practice squad, back on the 53-man roster, get cut, signed to the practice squad. And so that it may be a record of how many times he was signed this year off and on. So I believe that um, Baltimore is going to need some help at the cornerback position for sure. Most certainly at the number 2 spot. I don't think there's a guy on the roster who's ready to take that number 2 spot. There is a lot of potential depth at the position, especially with some of these practice squad guys, Daryl Waller, Darius Washington, so Kayvon Seymour, guys like that. But don't know if those rookies, Pepe and JAD, are equipped right now to step up and win the starting role. Let's get back to the regular screen. So I do think that Baltimore will be looking for a cornerback in that first round or bring in somebody in free agency. But I certainly think they'll put a lot of capital, if nothing more than draft capital. I think they'll put a lot of capital in that cornerback room as they are going to need some help, especially with the level of talent that's in our division. You know, you have the Cincinnati Bengals, T. Higgins, Chase, Jamar Chase, and Tyler Boyd. And then you got Pittsburgh with George Pickens and uh, um, Deontay Johnson. Um, and then you got the Cleveland Browns with what's that dude's name? I think his name's Donovan People-Jones, maybe. I think I might have that name right. And also Amari Cooper. So you definitely gonna need some talent just in your own division. And then you got other studs around the AFC. Yeah, I believe Jacksonville's on the rise, especially with Kevin Ridley coming in next year and with what they were able to do this year. And they got to win against Baltimore. So I think, cornerback depth is going to be important. And then you got Buffalo with Stephon Diggs, so on and so forth. So I think that cornerback room has a lot of question marks, a lot of holes. So Baltimore has a lot of work to do in that section. But hey guys, I appreciate you guys for listening in. That is the cornerback position, and next we will do the safeties. Please hit the like button on the way out the door. If you like this kind of content, hit the subscribe button if you hadn't already subscribed, and we'll catch you in the next video. This is the GM. I'm your guy, Leon Boulanger.